The night my stepfather, James, revealed the truth, my entire world crumbled. I had always believed my life was ordinary. My mother, Linda, was a strong woman who raised me with both love and discipline. James entered our lives when I was 6, and from that moment, he became my father in every way that mattered. He tucked me in at night, cheered for me at school plays, and patiently taught me how to ride a bike. Never once did I question the story I had been told about my biological father, Michael. According to my mother, Michael had left before I was born. That was the truth I had grown up believing, until that quiet evening when my mother was out of town, and James sat across from me. His expression so heavy it made my chest tighten. "Daughter," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I've waited for this day for a long time." At first, I assumed he wanted to discuss something serious. Maybe my future, my job, or relationships. But there was something different this time. His hands trembled slightly. His voice carried a weight I had never heard before. Whatever he was about to say, I could feel in my bones that it was going to change everything. "There's something you need to know," he continued, his gaze never leaving mine. "Something your mother and I have kept from you for a long time." A chill crept down my spine. My fingers curled tightly around the edge of the couch. "Okay," I said cautiously, bracing myself. James exhaled deeply, rubbing his hands together as if trying to summon the courage to go on. "I've always loved you as my daughter. You know that, right?" I nodded, though an uneasy feeling had begun to stir in my stomach. "But I need to tell you the truth about your real father," he said, his voice softer now. I frowned. "You mean Michael?" James shook his head slowly, his expression unreadable. "Yes and no." Confusion knotted my thoughts. "What do you mean?" His eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something in them I had never noticed before. Regret. Deep aching regret. "Michael wasn't the man your mother truly loved," he admitted. "He was a choice she made because she was afraid of what people would think. Your real father was someone else." My breath caught in my throat. "Who?" I managed to whisper. James swallowed hard, his hands gripping his knees as if grounding himself. Then, in a voice barely louder than a breath, he said the words that shattered my reality. "I am your father." The world around me seemed to dissolve. The walls of the living room blurred, the distant hum of the refrigerator faded, and the sound of a passing car outside became nothing more than a distant echo. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. "No," I whispered, shaking my head, refusing to accept what I had just heard. "That's not possible." James exhaled, his face etched with sorrow. "It is." He hesitated, then pressed on. "Your mother and I. We were in love long before she ever met Michael. But back then I was married. She was afraid of what people would say if they found out. When she discovered she was pregnant, she didn't want to ruin my life. So she told everyone Michael was the father and convinced him to marry her. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My entire life had been a lie. "You were my daughter from the very beginning," James continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I watched you grow up, knowing I couldn't claim you as mine. When my marriage ended and your mother finally let me be with her, I thought I'd finally get the chance to be the father I had always wanted to be. But she never let me tell you the truth." Tears burned my eyes. "And she just let me believe a lie." James nodded. "She thought it was best for you. She didn't want you to see her as the woman who destroyed a marriage. And she didn't want you to hate her for lying." I stood up, my hands shaking. "So all this time you were my father and I never knew." "I wanted to tell you," he said, his voice laced with regret. "But I promised your mother I wouldn't. Until now." "Why now?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "Because she was never going to tell you," he admitted. "And I couldn't live with that anymore." Anger, sadness, and betrayal swirled inside me like a storm. The man I had called Dad my whole life had truly been my father, and yet I had been robbed of that knowledge. And my mother, the woman I had trusted more than anyone, had lied to me for 24 years. My world felt like it had collapsed in an instant. "Do you hate me?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked at him, the man who had always been there for me, the man who had loved me as his own because I was his own. And in that moment I realized something. My love for him hadn't changed, but my trust in my mother had. "I don't know," I admitted. I need time." James nodded. "Take all the time you need. Just know that no matter what, I have always been, and will always be, your father." That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. My life suddenly felt like a twisted version of one of my mother's fairy tale books, except this one had no simple ending. When my mother returned home, I confronted her the moment she walked through the door. As she set her suitcase down, I asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" She froze, her eyes wide with panic. "Tell you what?" "You know what," I said, my voice cold. "That James is my real father." Her face paled, and she turned to James, who stood silently behind me. "Emma," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't," I snapped. "I want the truth. No more lies." Tears welled in her eyes, but I had no sympathy left to give. I had spent my entire life believing a lie, and now I needed answers. She sank onto the couch, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I was young. I was scared. James was married. And I didn't want to be the woman who ruined his life. Michael was there and he was willing to step up. So I let him. I clenched my fists. "And you never thought I deserved to know the truth?" "I thought I was protecting you," she whispered. I shook my head and stepped back. "No, you were protecting yourself." For weeks, I avoided my mother. I stayed at a friend's house, trying to process everything. James called me every day, checking in, making sure I was okay. And slowly, I began to realize something. He had always been my father. Even if I hadn't known the truth, he had loved me, supported me, and been there when I needed him. That was what mattered. Eventually, I agreed to meet with him. We sat at a park, watching the sunset. He turned to me with hopeful eyes. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I looked at him, the man who had always been my dad, and nodded. "I don't know how long it'll take, but I want to try." A small smile touched his lips. That's all I could ever ask for. The road to healing was long, but in the end, love was stronger than the lies that had kept us apart.